I want to see, SQL Server, would you rather use the non-clustered column store, or would you rather use that non-clustered row store index? The non-clustered column store does have every column that I need in there. It has first name, ID, state code, gender, report year, and name count. Having that non-clustered column store index on the table means that even if SQL Server chooses not to use that index, it now has batch mode operators available to it, which is pretty cool because batch mode operators, I mean, I have to scan everything in this table. Batch mode operators mean that instead of going rosy, one row, two row, three row, I can work with groups of rows, which for these bulk operations like I'm doing, I want to, do all these group bys across, first name, ID, state code, gender, figure out my running totals. Hey, I don't want to do this all row by row. All right, so I'm going to run this with actual plans on. We're still using threshold of 500. We've been doing that throughout. And so what we're looking at here is we want to know, does it pick the row store index or the column store index? And then also, do we get batch mode on operators in the query? And if so, where do we get batch mode? Now we're at 22 seconds already, so we're still not super duper fast, right? Still things are kind of slow. Looking at our execution plan, I've still got a warning here. My warning, looking at the properties of my select operator, we've still got that same type of, our warning is an excessive grant warning. So the warning hasn't changed there. We did get batch mode on some operators. This is a sort operator right before it returns the data to us. And note that it's not row mode. We got batch mode. We still haven't looked at whether it used our column store index, but just the presence of a column store index means this. When we are in batch mode, the actual time statistics are just for this operator. They aren't cumulative for it and its children. So this operator, the elapsed time on this sort was 545 seconds and the CPU time was 119. To see how many threads were used, so you're asking, Ron was asking about the degree of parallelism. I only have 4 CPUs on this. We can confirm that we had 4 threads, plus there's a little watcher thread that's assigned to say, okay, when are you all done since you're a parallelism related operator? So I am getting my top is set at 4. All 4 of them are being used. So we do have batch mode on some operators. This hash match also has batch mode here. So these operators right before we return data to the user got batch mode. What about down here? Let's look at our window spool operator. Oh, our window spool operator is in row mode. Just because we have batch mode in some places doesn't mean we have it everywhere. And looking over here, here's our other window spool. This is in row mode as well. Which index did we use? It decided, I want to use that row store index. So we created a column store index that it could use. It decided, I'd rather use that row store index. Now we did get a slightly different plan though, because we did get batch mode on some operators, but they aren't actually the operators that are taking all that time because it's pulling the data out of a row store index. SQL Server currently only wants to use row mode operators to process that. Well, I'm going to drop that row store index. I'm going to say, now your choice is between scanning the disk-based row store clustered index or using the non-clustered column store index. Now which one will you pick? So all I've changed is the thing that it has to choose from and said, okay, you've got to either scan the clustered index or use the column store. And now, okay, we're down to 8 seconds. We were always at like 25 seconds before. And it was just like, even when it had the column store, it was choosing to use that row store index. So what's different about our plan now? Well, let's take a look. We now have a column store index scan. It decided not to scan the clustered index. The sort operator is back because we've got, before we start doing our window function stuff, it's like, I'm going to have to, just like when we scan things from the disk-based clustered index, I need to have things ordered by your partition by columns and your order by columns, I also need to bring along that name count that we're doing the running total across. But then we go straight into something different. Before, we had segment operators and we had a window spool operator, right? This is a new operator. This is a window aggregate operator. And if we look at this operator's properties, this is a batch mode operator. This was introduced in SQL Server 2016. So you can't get this up. This is why this demo, you can't do it, see everything in it on older versions. We only got this operator in 2016. It is batch mode only. And it is really fast. And notice that we don't have those segments. This does the work of multiple operators. If I look at the properties on this and I look at its actual time statistics, 219 milliseconds. Woo! This is a really awesome, this window aggregate operator is really, really awesome. But SQL Server, even when I had the non-clustered column store index, just because it was deciding to still use the row store index, it wasn't giving me this operator for some reason, right? It only, for this query, so far, I've only been able to get this if I took the row store index away. We're going to see if we can get it with the row store index, because we maybe do, like what I'd really like, right, in my ideal world, I don't want this sort operator. I want to pre-sort in a row store index, but I want my new super fast window aggregate operator. So what I'd really, really like is yes, please, I want my window aggregate operator, but if I can get it to use a row store index instead of a column store index, and the row store index is tuned for my partition by and order by column, then I don't have to have the sort. And that saves me time. I want to pre-sort in my index, I want to have my cake and I want to eat it too. I want to pre-sort in my row store index, and then I want to use this fancy new operator.